The Owl House episode from this week, Any Sport in the Storm, might be one of my favorite episodes of any animated show ever now. Like, the Owl House has been really strong lately. It's been taking itself very seriously and yet still giving us fun stories over the last few weeks. But this is one of the best episodes of the show. And I say that acknowledging that some episodes of this show have just, like, fantastic action in them on top of good stories. This is still up there with those. Especially since it did have action in it, technically, with the sports stuff. What I think I like best about it is that it's structured like any other filler character building episode of the week, but it's not really. It's a very important lore episode that furthers the overarching story of this show considerably, and not just because it develops characters. In fact, there's more that I want to talk about this episode, to the point that you're going to notice I left some details out that you probably wanted me to talk about. I'm going to make an entire separate video talking about details in this episode that I feel ask or answer significant questions. The main plot of this episode is a convergence between two characters that work so well together, and yet I didn't really expect that it would be these characters that came together in this way to start to further things, and that's Willow and Hunter. Which I just gotta say, this is an entire episode about, like, action-y stuff, the sports stuff, starring Willow and Viney, who's also an awesome character. I really like her, too. And it's about Hunter, who is one of the most interesting characters in the show. And it builds his character and furthers his arc, and opens up doors for him to start befriending the heroes, which may lead to him changing sides and contributing to the downfall of his uncle. Like, at this point, I would say we're like 95% sure that Hunter is in fact a Grimwalker clone of Philip, aka Bellows' brother. Like, I don't see how you could possibly deny that, based on the few looks we've gotten of Philip's brother, and the fact that I don't think I remember to mention it, but, like, you see that Philip was definitely researching Grimwalker stuff. You see it in the background when he walks into his lair at the end, when we get that little scene of dramatic irony at the end where we see his lair and see him 100% definitively as Bellows. And so while I think he for sure made a Grimwalker for himself, Hunter is also very clearly a Grimwalker of the other brother. And in this episode, we find out that this kid did not have a normal upbringing at all. We learn a little bit about how the Emperor's Coven works. They take you away from your family and put you through horrific training to test whether or not you're even worthy to be in the Coven and prepare you for the rigors of Coven life. And whereas others who were taken away from a normal life to do that, seem to understand how messed up that was. Like, they've obviously been conditioned to think that it's an honor, so it seems to take a little bit of time and reflection for them to come to that understanding. But Hunter's just all on board with it. He enjoyed it. That was just like a formative part of his young life. And the fact that it didn't feel out of place amongst the rest of his young life, the rest of his formative experiences, tells me that his life has always kind of been like that since the very beginning. And he flat out says that he doesn't interact with people his own age, ever. He clearly doesn't understand what other people's interests are, what, like, the typical other person's interest is, like what the average person's interest is. Very roundabout way of making that point. Thank you, brain. It's just, this kid's not very well adjusted anyway. That's been perfectly obvious since he came into the show. But it's a miracle that he's as well adjusted as he is. And it makes me wonder, like, I've been wondering this for a long time. The fact that the Grimwalker thing is magical. It's not like you're cloning someone from their genetics and growing a whole new person that just has the same genes as another person. There's a magical aspect to this. So I have to wonder, are they just cloning the person's body? Like, does it just clone the person's body? Like, obviously, Bellows is Philip. Like, I truly believe he is still Philip. It's just, maybe he's been alive for a long time. Maybe he's forgotten stuff. But he is still Philip. His mind came over with him. And, like, there's some implications in the show that that isn't a natural aspect of the Grimwalker thing? We don't know that for sure. Did anything of Philip's brother come over into Hunter when he was created as a Grimwalker? Like, I feel like that's a question worth asking here, because if something of the brother did come over with the creation of Hunter, then learning about Hunter can tell us something about the brother. And learning about the brother can tell us about Hunter. And I want to know, I'm super curious about how much of Hunter is Belos's brother versus a new person created from the specific experiences of Hunter himself. Like, Hunter clearly has something to prove here, and he wants to prove himself, but you can tell it's difficult, and he understands how difficult it's going to be to do that, and he almost freezes up. Does that tell us anything about Belos's brother? Was he the kind of person who didn't stand up to adversity well? When he lost control of things, did that tend to be where his efforts ended? Because Hunter doesn't really seem like he's going to be able to accomplish much else in the circumstance that started out this episode until he's given advice on how to prove himself by Darius. And like, yeah, he thinks on his feet well enough throughout the episode, and he makes decisions and acts on them, but like, I don't think he was ever really out of his depth throughout the rest of the episode. It was just at the beginning. Like, you get what I'm saying, right? Like, it took us forever to really learn anything about Philip, but like, we're definitely going to start learning about Philip's brother in earnest soon. I just want to know how much that's going to tell us about this other interesting and mysterious person at the same time. Now, his part of the episode does start out, though, with him being put in charge of a meeting of the Coven heads, but they just kind of do their own thing instead. They don't listen to him. Darius only really listens to him because he's sewn the past Golden Guard sigil into his cloak. Like the previous Golden Guard sigil, which... Did I know there was a previous Golden Guard? I don't remember, but it was of interest to me, at the very least. And Darius pokes fun at him for it. For one, doing a really terrible job of it, and for two, not deserving it in Darius's eyes. And you can tell Hunter's not really sure if he deserves it either. He doesn't have his magic anymore, he just has the talisman. And so he's desperate. He's desperate to be as of use as he can be. And it's honestly kind of depressing. So Darius suggests that he might be able to prove himself by finding more recruits for the Emperor's Coven, so he disguises himself as a Hexside student and heads to Hexside at the same time that they're having a club day. They're trying to recruit kids to various clubs, and Willow has started a... What was the name of the sport? I don't even remember. But it's like a more Quidditchy sport than the sport that's already in the show. According to the wiki, it's called Flyer Derby. Okay, cool. It's kind of a silly name, but whatever, it's fine. I was expecting something a little more fantasy sounding. It doesn't matter, though. That's what Willow was working out in preparation for back in Follies. She, like Hunter, is trying to leave her mark, so to speak. And so she thinks starting Hexside's first Flyer Derby team might be her way of going about that. Also, quick tangent, she's still wearing the braids from when Amity braided her hair back in Follies, which I thought was super cute. Also, another tangent I'd like to go off on for just a second. I didn't notice this the last couple of times I watched Follies, but I rewatched Follies to make sure that that really was that they really were the same braids. And when Amity shows up to get help from Willow and sits down to braid her hair while they talk, I hadn't noticed this, but Willow, like, you can tell from the expression on her face when Amity says, "I'm glad we could be like this again," as in, you know, as friends again. You can tell from Willow's expression that she is very consciously making the choice to open herself back up to Amity, because there's still some of that leftover animosity there. But she is consciously making the choice to move forward with her friendship with Amity, and I thought that said so much about the character. Willow's just such a great character. I love her a lot. But she and Hunter talk. Hunter tries to recruit her. She tries to recruit him. And she mentions that she hopes to recruit Hexside's best and brightest to the team. So he decides he's going to join up with her Flyer Derby team so that he can recruit the team, the best and the brightest of Hexside, all at once. And he's super judgy of them when he first sees who's there, because none of them really seem all too best or bright. But then they really impress him on the field when they have a pickup game, more or less, to prove that the team has merit enough for the school to allow the club to exist in the first place. I'm not going to get into how one of the teachers was clearly bullying a student, because if I did, I'd get really upset. So let's move on from that and just say they did a really good job in their game. And it was a lot of fun to watch. And then Hunter's like, okay, so now we're going to join the Emperor's Coven together, and basically gets them all kidnapped. But in the end, he makes the right choice and tries to free them before they can be taken off to the Emperor's Coven, have their talismans taken away and given to Bellows, and then put through all of the same terrible stuff that he was put through when he was younger. And it's actually because, what's his name? Steve, one of the Emperor's guards, mentions how messed up it was and how he regrets joining the Coven in the first place. That seems to lead Hunter to thinking for the first time that maybe the Emperor's Coven sucks. And the episode ends, like Darius is the one that comes to take them back to the palace. The episode ends with Darius revealing that he was never going to take them to the Emperor in the first place. He was just going to take them back to the school because they didn't need any more recruits. And he's like super fair to Hunter in this scene. And this is one of the things that I would like to talk more about in another video down the line. But Darius is super fair to Hunter in this scene. He's put off because he wasn't supposed to work today. He doesn't particularly like Hunter anyway. And he's definitely still loyal to the Emperor. Like, I'm not saying he's now suddenly a good guy or anything, but he's super fair to this kid. He recognizes that Hunter did accomplish what he asked, that Hunter has room to grow, that it's valuable for Hunter to have a lifeline to the outside world, and gives him that, and even kind of mentors him a little bit and implies that he might do so down the line, because it's a beneficial thing for both of them. Couple that with the fact that he was going to drop the kids back off at school rather than exploit them, and I think Darius might be redeemable, which is weird to say because I really hate that guy. And even though Hunter, he called himself Caleb, I think, which I found that very curious, but I'll just say it now. Was that maybe do we know the brother's name? I'm looking at his page on the wiki. I didn't look it up prior to this because I wasn't going to talk about this in the video originally. But it doesn't look like we do. Was Caleb possibly the brother's name? And Hunter pulled it out of thin air because he was remembering something of his past? I don't know, it's worth asking. If I'm just wrong about that, tell me. I don't want to look like more of an idiot than I already do. This episode just got me really excited. My synapses are firing all over the place about this one. But anyway, even though he makes the right choice in the end, Caleb still betrayed Willow, and yet she's come to recognize that people are flawed and nuanced. And when he tries to come and rescue them at the end, that seems to earn back some of her trust. And so it's implied that she is still open to being friends with him by the end. And then Amity and Luce, who are off on their own thing that I'm going to talk about in a second, throughout the entire episode, see him as part of their team, the Emerald Entrails, which is just such a Boiling Isles sports team name that it hurts. And they're stunned to see him, which is super interesting because it means that they're not shying away from these characters all coming together and discussing their experiences with this person freely, which is going to progress the story. Like, I can't even imagine all the ways this could progress the story as immediately as next episode, if they want to. It was really good. It was a really good episode where two, I would say, minor characters take center stage and carry the episode magnificently. And then, pertinent to something that I was just talking about in my last Steven Revisiverse episode for my Steven Universe discussion series. In Steven Universe, there are a couple episodes of that show where it seems like the showrunners were taking pot shots at fans, poking fun at the fact that fans care so much about fan theories, and poking fun at the fandom in general. This episode did a similar kind of thing. It criticized and poked a little fun at a fan theory, but it did so in a fun way. In this episode, Luce and Amity realize that Amity thinks that the author of the Azura books is a witch, whereas Luce thinks that she's a human. And so they try to reconcile this. Supposedly the author is having a book signing here, like locally to them, today. So they go off, and as they're on their way there, they start to theorize about what this could mean. Does this woman perhaps have a portal between worlds? And all that they needed this entire time was just to find her and talk to her and get her to help them? This is interesting because the fandom has been theorizing about whether or not the Azura books, and by extension the author of the Azura books, were going to be important to the story of the show. There are multiple theories about this person and these books and what they might contribute to the overall narrative, but we find out that there's really no mystery. The books are written by a human, and the ones with the witch photo on the back were just a scam. And while this could still be a red herring to try to throw us off so that we find out the true nature of the author, we're surprised, but it doesn't really feel like that. It just feels like the crew on this show were having a little bit of fun with us. But rather than laughing at us, or just being annoyed with us, like the Crewniverse sometimes seemed in those couple of Steven Universe episodes, it really felt like they were just, laughing along with us. It led to several cute interactions between Luce and Amity, and gave us some cameos from some fun background characters. It wasn't much of a B-plot, but it was still a pretty fun one, all things considered. Also, just one final tangent, if you'll allow me just one final tangent. Willow's so powerful. Like, she's no match for Darius when she briefly fights Darius, but she's scary good with plant magic. Like this girl, it's such a good thing that she switched tracks. It's cute and terrifying at the same time, which is one of the reasons I like the character so much. She just completely overwhelms Hunter. It's great. This is just a fantastic episode. Like, I'm trying to think, there are very few episodes of cartoons, of any cartoons ever, that I think just do the job that they set out to do as well as this one did. And if this is going to be the standard of storytelling for even, because like we're 3 episodes into this half of the season, right? If this is going to be like the standard for storytelling for even 33% of the rest of this season, this is going to be a fantastic season of this show. It's not like the other 2 episodes were bad. They pale in comparison to this one, which was just impeccable. But yeah, there are more things I want to say about this episode, and mostly just things I want to go into more detail about, because I think I've mentioned most of them at this point. I didn't intend to, but I did. Again, the synapses are firing up there, just shooting off in any direction they want. It's very, very annoying. But yeah, I don't really feel like I need to say anything else about the episode in terms of reviewing it. It's really freaking good. One of the best of the series so far. That said, if you have seen any Sport in a Storm, what did you think of it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.